Welcome back to the Conversations with Cacao podcast. I am your host, Alexandra Gabrielle, and today we're welcoming a truly radiant guest, Jen of Jen Open Hearts. Jen is a self-proclaimed diamond of curiosities, a lifelong learner with a deep love for human design, the gene keys, and the great mystery of life. As a manifester, she is here to initiate and impact, guiding others to open their hearts and step deeper into love, because that's exactly what she committed to doing within herself. She weaves together human design, cacao, and self-love through her passion project, Jen Open Hearts, offering unique spaces for exploration and transformation. She also works with Florecer, a heart-centered business by Florencia Friedman, co-founder of Cacao Lab, where she helps create spaces for the heart through workshops, retreats, and cacao circles. I am so excited to dive into Jen's journey, her wisdom, and the magic she brings to the world. Let's welcome Jen. Welcome to the Conversations with Cacao podcast. I have this beautiful guest with me here today, Jennifer from Jen Opens Hearts, based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Tuning in today, we are here to be in beautiful conversation to explore anything that comes our way. So let's start by dropping into our hearts, into our bodies. And maybe we start with a gentle stretch today, stretching our shoulders, our spine, our toes, and feeling the places where we maybe need to bring in a little bit more space, more presence, more dance, more wiggle, more light, more awareness, and more breath. And allowing our breath to begin to fill these spaces within us as we take a deep breath in, allowing our breath to be guided to all of the places within our body that just need that little bit of extra oxygen today. Taking a deep breath in, breathing into the spaces in between our vertebrae, breathing into our inner organs, our shoulders, our neck, breathing into our voices, breathing into our minds, our thoughts, our toes, and our feet. And just allowing this breath to become even more fluid as we connect with this life force energy that we have available to us at every moment. Taking a deep breath in, allowing ourselves to fill up and expand, and exhaling. And as we breathe in to the spaces within us that maybe need that extra attention, and with our exhales, maybe connecting with the release of what is no longer needed. And finding yourself in your cycle of breathing in and exhaling. Breathing in this expansion and exhaling softness, gentleness. Breathing in into our bodies and maybe even beyond our bodies. And exhaling, allowing our breath to move us, allowing our breath to guide us, to breathe and dance through us as we become the conscious directors of our own life force. Breathing in and exhaling And with our next inhale, imagining our connection to the heart of the earth as we breathe in. Exhaling our energy down to the heart of the earth, opening up the space up around us to really connect. I like to imagine sometimes this pillar of light that connects us to the heart of the earth. And just allowing this connection to be easy and soft and fluid, like the in-breath and out-breath. Allowing yourself to breathe in the energy of the heart of the earth, beginning to flow up your feet, your legs, your hips, all the way into your heart space. And exhaling all around you. Breathing in and up towards the heart of the sky, connecting in with the sun, the stars, the moon. And breathing down this energy from these silver energies all the way into our crown, our mind, our bodies. With our next breath, breathing in these energies even deeper. And exhaling our connection all around us. For your next few breath cycles, just observing your own inhalations and exhalations, your own connection to the earth and to the stars, to the sun, to the energies all around us. And allowing our breath to become the center point for our connection to this moment, to presence, to the here and now. Allowing our breath to be able to connect us in with stillness, the stillness of our hearts, the stillness of our mind, and feeling each breath as a wave. The inhaling of the crest of the wave, and the exhalation as the wave breaks. Breathing in and out. And I invite you all just to envision this beautiful circle and sphere of light that all of our listeners are in right now. And as you breathe in, breathing in all of this love of connection. And as you exhale, allowing your breath to be a gift, connecting all of our listeners that are listening right now. Breathing in and receiving this love from the other listeners. And exhaling as a gift to all of our listeners. Breathing in, allowing ourselves to receive the love and blessings from everybody who has previously been on this call. And as we exhale, allowing our love to be beamed to all of the people who have previously listened to this conversation. And as we breathe in again, breathing in our love from all of the future listeners. And as we exhale, beaming this love and this breath of gratitude towards all the future listeners. And finding ourselves coming back to any sort of breath pattern that feels most supportive to you. Allowing our awareness to expand and feeling our connection to all previous listeners, to all present listeners, and to all future listeners. That this conversation may be evergreen, that what is needed to be heard at this time be received with ease and grace, and that the unfolding of this is to the highest good of our hearts, of love, of joy, of presence, and of humanity at this time. And allowing ourselves to begin to open up as we prepare to receive the medicine of cacao. And we have the blessing and the honor of Jennifer guiding our blessing today.
Just bringing the cup of cacao into the heart space. And just taking a few nice deep breaths, breathing in through the nose, exhaling, arriving. And just taking a moment here to give gratitude to this beautiful medicine of the heart. Giving gratitude for the time that it takes to process and to have her be in our cups today. Especially in this fast-paced world where we're expecting everything instantaneously, cacao reminds us to slow down and to soften the heart. And giving gratitude to the heart of the earth. Thank you for holding us, supporting us, connecting us to community, connecting us to this deep motherly energy. Thank you. And thank you to the heart of the sky. Thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for the dreams. But thank you also for our breath. To this breath, it's a beautiful portal to the present moment. Taking a nice deep breath in together. Letting go. And giving gratitude to our voices, to our unique songs that we sing, to the words we choose to say. May we choose to create blessings, to create love, to create beauty, to create discernment with our words, but also boundaries when we need them. May we bless ourselves with our own voices and connect to the power of our words. And thank you to the wind that blows, that carries these blessings. Thank you to the heart of the air. And thank you to the heart of the waters, the sacred waters. Thank you to the waters in our own physical forms, our blood and our lymph that's continually flowing. Thank you to the waters outside of us. Thank you to the rivers and streams, the lakes, the oceans, the sea. Thank you for allowing us to be purified emotionally, energetically, and physically. But also thank you for carrying this sweet medicine of cacao in our cups today. And thank you to the heart of the fire, the sacred fire. Thank you to the sun. Thank you for shining your rays in all directions, teaching us and connecting us to the essence of universal love, the essence of giving. And thank you to our own inner suns. Thank you to these beautiful lights within us that are filtered through our unique personalities, these gifts that we bring forward, these life stories, these heroes' journeys that we get to bring forward through our unique expression. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to all the beautiful earth-based traditions and lineages that are holding us, that are supporting this medicine. And thank you to us for opening our eyes and ears, our hearts to receive this wisdom, reminding us that we are connected to this beautiful planet, to Mother Earth. And thank you to our teachers, past, present, and those yet to come. Thank you for all the lessons, all the gifts that we've received. And thank you to this beautiful spirit of cacao who is softening the armory around the heart, allowing our hearts to expand and to open. Thank you for crossing border and boundary and people, allowing us to connect with her in sweet and reverent ways, knowing that the essence of the heart is magnetic, it's beautiful, and it's something that we can all feel. And thank you for allowing us to enjoy you today. And just bringing the cacao up to the nose, relishing in the scent, the aroma. And just taking a moment to give gratitude for the time that it takes for this cup to arrive for us today. The beauty of that process, slowing us down in this fast-paced world, and creating intentional time together. And bringing your intention into your heart, the first thing that pops up, allowing it to travel into the throat. You can feel free to speak it out loud, but blowing it into your cup first, animating the energy with the breath. You may enjoy your first sip of cacao. That's nice.
Yeah. Thank you for that beautiful blessing. Today is one of those days where you take a sip and you're just like, oh, I need more. Like the nourishment to fill up. As you guided us to drop into our heart to receive whatever intention came forth first, it was really the words that you spoke of intentional time together that stood out to me the most. And I love to blow into my cacao. Yeah, as you said, animating the energy within the cup. But you did this beautiful sound, which was, shoo. And I always just imagine imagery and colors, and sometimes I blow like dolphins
Oh, I
or
love that.
like things into my cup. But I've never once, and sometimes I'll tone like woo into my cup. But that really sweet, just little, whoosh, I love that. I
That's
mean,
so sweet. I love hearing that because I
into
feel
the
like
cup.
it's like my inner child that's like, everything is magic. This is too. I can't always see it or feel it, but I just trust. So I feel like that I felt really safe and comfortable. So thank you for
Yeah.
for enjoying it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I that is like something my inner child and my that part of me, that joyful part really loved to hear. A little introduction in the beginning of how you are a cacao facilitator. You work with human design primarily and also bring in and incorporate the gene keys. And you are based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, born and raised close by
Yep.
towards the town, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Would you like to share a little bit about your story, your journey with cacao, of your life, whatever comes forth most present for you with our listeners so we know a little bit more about you?
Absolutely. I would love to. I feel really blessed to be on this path, and I feel like there was a moment in my childhood where I really loved like emo music, like like kind of sad, emotional, like very raw. And there was this moment where my mom had bought me a CD, and the CD was Bright Eyes, and on the Bright Eyes cover it said a quote, and the quote was like, I just want to be warm light that spreads. And I was like a teenager, like really young. Nobody in my house was talking about light or like warm light. That wasn't just a conversation where I grew up. So something about that seed that got planted, I feel was like one of my first understandings of like the heart, and what that means and how we can show up with the heart and kind of change the energetics of a space. And so I feel like that was like one tiny seed that got planted long ago. And then ever since I was always looking for it, like trying to find it in my life. And I just feel really, really blessed because in my life path, I was an artist. Like I studied fine art. I went and did the academia thing, went to undergrad and then grad school, and like even taught at the college level fine art. And it was funny because I was teaching inner city in Detroit, and I never like I love teaching art. It was wonderful, but like my end of semester reviews were never like Jen is the best like art teacher. It was always like, wow, Jen really helped me feel happy and safe, and like I felt like I could talk to her about anything, or she always encouraged me and made me feel good. So I felt like my role as like just a heart-based person has always been like shaking inside of me. I like always wanted to come out, but I just wasn't always listening. Um, and then finding, Cacao was during the pandemic, and I was like, oh, I guess, we're not really seeing a lot of people. And so I got onto YouTube more than I normally would. And then I discovered the artist Cado Valo. I'm not sure I'm saying her name right, but she was just emanating like so much glowy, happy joy. And like she was an artist too. So that was like, to me, that was like, wow, like I could be an artist and be heart centered. It doesn't have to be the artist who's like very emotional and getting the dark feelings out, which is good. It's really cathartic. But like she kind of was a window into like we can make art and be creative in like a loving way that reminds people of the beauty of life or like the beauty of nature. And then she was also drinking cacao, and I was like, I have no idea what that is, but I want it. So I like got it right away and like just watched more of her videos and just felt really connected to connecting with the heart. And I think especially during a time that felt sort of confusing for a lot of people, it felt very nourishing. And I felt like I was thriving because I'm like, wow, I opened my heart up. And it just felt really, really beautiful and really tender. And I feel like it just sort of reminded me who I always wanted to be in my life. And I feel like that's like one of my gifts, like even as I study things like human design and gene keys, it's like all of it kind of comes back to those notions and those aspects. So I just feel really happy and really blessed and just loving going deeper. Like I just love learning about cacao and connecting to the heart and how can we change like a field when we're in a space where maybe someone's sad or stressed or having a hard time. Like it's not always about what we say, which is beautiful, but I feel like it's just like the presence that we can carry when we go into those spaces. So I feel like everything I just said is wanting to be a cohesive story, but I hope there was I hope that kind of made sense on like the journey, the aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very rich story you shared, and so many aspects of it where I'm like, oh, I want to know more. Like, let's go here, let's go there. Where do we want to go? So my daughter, she's 10 now, and she goes to the Waldorf school, and the first part of their philosophy is not so much academic, but the uh, first through third grade, it's all about making sure that the child feels safe in the world because they're still in the etheric realms, that it's really creating a space where they feel physically safe and held. And that's the most important thing, to have the teachers be soft. And it's about stories. It's about cultivating and supporting that alpha brainwave state where they're still so impressionable, allowing them to begin to express and work with watercolors. So they're flowing, they're learning how to blend and mix and just feel like, okay, I can be in this body. I have the foundation to feel safe and held and protected. And you mentioned as a teenager though too, but how your journey was as a child and that relationship to what you're cultivating now, how that was reflected when you were younger. If there is something that pops up for you.
I feel I love the Waldorf philosophy, and I have a friend who's a teacher for like a younger, I think I don't know which grade it is or level, but it's very young, and it's been beautiful to see the evolution of her children and like that notion of like safety in the body. I feel like that was never something I was taught. There was actually the opposite of like a fear of the body, and I think that was maybe um, through the church or just like protective energy of the father, having young like daughters who become women, there's like some interesting interplay. So I feel like for myself, the soothing came from places like art. And so I feel like that's why art was such a big part of my childhood. And it was art, it was poetry. I also at the same time was like listening to Eminem and like going through like my emotional phase and like kind of the inner anger and stuff like that. So I have a lot of empathy for those past versions because they didn't know, when you're raised in a home where maybe the parents work a lot and you don't get that like physical touch or attention. So I feel like I'm like an Aries sun and I'm a manifestor in human design. So I'm like independent, but I'm also like want to be held. So I feel like in my teenage years, like I found running as well. And so running was like my first form of meditation without knowing it. So I joined like, different teams like cross country and would just like run. And I felt like that was like my body, my spirit, like letting go of fear or anger energy or just like not feeling totally safe. And it's almost like running away, like there's some different interesting elements of it. But I also like to think about it as like my first spiritual practice without realizing it. I felt like the runner's mind, it kind of does take you into different brain waves, like where you're almost in like a flow state because you're kind of really in tune with your body. So it's been this kind of interesting, like a teeter-totter back and forth of like, I'm in my body and now I'm out. I'm in my body, now I'm out. And now that I'm 36 now, and now I feel like, wow, like, yeah, it's taken longer than I wanted, but like I feel like I'm more in my body than I've ever been. And I feel like Cacao has definitely been like a really beautiful teacher in that space to be like, wow, it is okay to like process emotions or cry, or like if I'm tired, it's okay to rest. I feel like life has been a lot about permission slips that keep getting written over and over again. Like, hey, this beautiful heart medicine's making me realize I need to slow down, or I need to be creative. Where's that inner child? She wants to play more. She wants to paint and not make it for like an academic space or a gallery. Like it's just that pure, raw sweetness of creation. So I feel like those are a few things that are coming up as like, yeah, it's just interesting. It's like, and I think it's a compassion builder too, because we just don't know who's running the show when we meet someone. It might be like a version of their childhood self that was really hurt or sad, or they didn't know how to be in their body. So I feel like when we have that awareness and it grows, I feel like then we can see it in others and we can have more compassion and be like, wow, that's got to be challenging, and like I'm gonna still hold you in love even though maybe it's a difficult moment or something like that.
Love how you say meeting somebody and not knowing who's running the show of all these versions of self, which one's navigating or guiding the conversation. And have you seen the film Inside Out?
I haven't. No, I've heard about it though.
Okay. Yeah, so that comes to mind of like which emotion is actually in headquarters guiding the decision and how it's coming out. And I definitely recommend it.
Oh, that's
It's a good
cool.
one.
I can't wait to check it out.
Talking about all these levels of being and existence, we have the wounded child that may be expressing in this moment, or the angry teenager, or the lack of self-confidence, or maybe it's the joyful one that's meeting us in this moment. And where does the interplay of human design and gene codes come in for you? What does that dictate over our expression in this moment, and how do they work together?
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good question, Alexandra. I feel like human design came to me through a friend who's a projector, and she was like, give me all your information. And I was like, okay, this isn't that weird because you kind of did this before about astrology. So she went in and found my human design. And then ever since that, I just haven't looked away because it felt so true for me. And it felt very like, it felt like I was wearing a coat that wasn't mine. And then I was like, oh, I don't need to have that coat on anymore. And I took it off, and now I'm like, okay, like I know this about myself. I know these different tendencies. I know these different gifts, these qualities. And I love human design because I feel like it helps us have permission to be more ourselves. Because what human design tells us is that like 60 to 70% of the population are known as sacral beings. So the sacrals have like this constant access to like life force energy. They're really wonderful. They create huge energy. They're kind of like the life force energy for the human grid, or like the grid of consciousness, I suppose. And then if you're non-sacral, which is what a manifestor is, it means like you're going to need more rest. Um, you might not always finish your projects. You might just be like impacting and starting. It might not make sense at all to anybody else on the outside. And so I felt like, yeah, like I felt that way. I was like, I don't really have the motivation or the willpower to maybe work that traditional job or that 9 to 5 kind of aspect. And I just get very tired very fast. And so, but when I'm passionate, I feel like time just, it feels like my best day would be literally sitting outside reading like 20 books at a time and just like, oh my gosh, to me, I don't know where that shows up in human design or astrology, but I feel like that's my safe, happy space with cup of cacao next to me. And I feel human design just helped me let go of the expectations of who I thought I should be and how I should make decisions. I feel like that's a really big thing with human design is we all have basically each energy types has a different aura, and those auras are meant for different things. The manifester especially, it can be it's a big aura and it can be kind of filled with friction, but the friction is only because somebody's not meant to be on your train at that time. Whereas others, it can be like a big energy that welcomes everyone, or a projector's is very intimate, like, okay, me and you, this is us, we're doing it, so it's like just having that self-acceptance and that trust, because I feel often very pulled to my heart and different things that don't make sense from a very linear perspective. But to me, they're all very fun. Like, for example, I'm like, I'm going to start making face oils. I love face oils. I wanted to buy some, but I was like, I can make it. I'm going to do it. And so I just did it. And to like maybe my husband or other people like, oh, I thought you were doing human design. I was like, well, yeah, I am. But I also really love like this idea of this face oil that I made called Radiant Skin. And it's like about the inner radiance, like shining outward, but like instead of it inside out, it's outside in. So I feel like I love the system so much because it just feels like trust. It helps me come back to myself. It's really empowering once you start to know and you understand the different energy types and how they relate to one another. You can really, it's almost like a tool for understanding energy too, because you can say, oh, they're a projector. How can I see them? How can I, as a manifestor, say, wow, you're really, I'm not saying it just to say it, but I can see that you really care and you should do this, or this could be a really cool avenue for you to go down. So I feel like it's the embodiment of seeing people as well. How can I see someone and then impact them? Because that's a big part of the manifestor energy is like seeing someone and then maybe saying something, doing it myself, and then they see it and they're like, yeah, I should do that. And I can actually do it better, So it's like, it's very interesting. I just feel like I said in the beginning, like it felt like I took off a coat that wasn't mine and I was wearing it for way too long. And I just encourage everyone to connect with the systems, whether it be human design or astrology, just to whittle away what's me and what's not me. I think it can be a very useful tool for self-awareness in general.
For our listeners who aren't familiar with human design, could you give a brief overview about what it is and how it works or the history behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting story. It was a transmission to this guy named Ra Uruhu, and he was on the island of Ibiza, and he received a transmission of the voice. And for 7 days, he received this transmission, and basically it was an entire system of human design. But it's filtered through a human, and he also happened to be a manifestor, so it's kind of funny. But essentially, it's looking at a weaving of different systems, both ancient and contemporary, like modern physics and things like that. So it's the I Ching, it's a Vedic chakra system, it's astrology, it's the Kabbalah. So it's like this weaving of different systems into one, which is in itself is mind blowing. Like, how does that even happen? But the idea is it's kind of out there in some ways, but like there's impressions of what's known as neutrinos, like in the system at the time that you were born and at the time your soul came to being. So your human design is kind of like a blueprint for your life, and it can just kind of, again, give you that permission and understand that we're all coming into this world with a certain recipe or a certain set of flavors that say, I'm Jennifer, the manifestor in this lifetime, but there's like infinite number of like variables that I could connect to either with human design or even astrology, of course, too. So we all kind of have a job to do, like in human design, like different energy types are here to do different things. and to really trust that. But what really matters the most in human design is just connecting with how something makes you feel. So I feel like it comes back to that body awareness of like, is something causing me to close down or am I expanding? And it comes through in different ways. So even if you're a generator with a sacral who's all about like yes or no, make a decision pretty quick, it's still like listening to either your body through sounds or through like openness and closeness. Does my insides feel like alive and like excited by this? Or do I feel like, I don't know, or do I need to hear myself talk? And when I talk, I can hear, oh, wow, I'm excited about this. So there's so many, so many different variables, but I think it's such a cool system. Like I really, really love it.
Thank you for sharing about that. I came across human design when I was a teenager too, and I had a stint where I was like really into it and very curious about it. And it's been one of those things that's it's always on the periphery. Like sometimes I'll go back into it again, but I love when you find something that really connects with you and helps you. For me, it's like those things that help me to understand my relationship to myself and to the world. And I feel like anything that can get you through this human experience that in the most loving and compassionate and nurturing way is really beneficial. What are the gene keys for the people who are familiar with that?
I love the Gene Keys. I even have the biggest book in the world. It's like such a big honking book. It's crazy, but Gene Keys are amazing. They're a system connected to human design, specifically related to the I Ching, which is like a Chinese divination system. But essentially, like the guy who founded human design or had the transmission was also working close with this guy named Richard Rudd. And for whatever reason, they sort of split apart. But from Richard Rudd came the Gene Keys. And so even just thinking about Richard Rudd, I feel like I'm slowing down a little bit because Richard Rudd, if you haven't listened to him, even if you just find him on YouTube or something, like he's a very contemplative poet. And so the Gene Keys are a really beautiful system. And it's all about contemplation and different frequencies. So a good place to start is looking at your human design conscious sun. You can look it up, but basically it's a set of numbers. And for example, mine's like 25 and then it says 0.5. And so that's gene key 25. And basically it's a contemplation. You're not meant to go into it and like figure it out. It's more or less like, what does that really mean? And how does that feel in my body? And so for every single gene key, there's a frequency, and what Richard calls them is like the shadow. So like that's like the challenging aspects, right? It's like a frequency that, yeah, life can be challenging. I can go into these, not necessarily lower, I'm trying to find a better word, but it's just a different frequency. And then from this shadow, we can arise into the gift, and the gift is another embodiment of it. And then from there, we can enter into the city state, which is like the highest expression. And that's when from what I understand, we get glimpses and peaks of it. Some people can live in that state more than others. But it's more of like we all know it. We all know that like really good feeling of like being in our bodies, feeling like excited, happy, lit up. Like I feel like those are like the little unique expressions of the city. But and when we're in the shadow, it's not, oh, we're bad. It's just like a body awareness. Like, oh, I'm actually in the constriction mode of the shadow of the 25th, which is constriction. So like it's tightening. But like, okay, the lesson that Richard Rudd shares, and you can get the book, or you can even go online and he has audio. So if you're like, oh, I just found out my gene key is 32, I can go ahead and download that and just listen to it and be like, what does this even mean? Or like, can I just sit and think about it? So it's kind of like just like this Buddhic nature of contemplation, of considering, of listening to poetry. I feel is like such a good way to describe these transmissions, because they feel very soft and they feel very nurturing. And I feel like that's the essence of the founder himself, is Richard Rudd. And human design has been filtered through a lot more people now. Like the original person is, not everybody like loves his vibe, but there's many people who've like kind of taken it in a new approach. So again, I just feel like if you're curious about self-exploration and you just want to know a little bit more about yourself, I feel like both those systems are really cool to connect with.
Thank you for sharing. Richard Rudd is just has this deeply calming radiance that he transmits when he speaks, and I love that you called it poetry because it really feels like that. It allows for more spaciousness for me to really drop in, slowing down, creating more space to know self. I didn't actually realize that they were connected, human design and gene keys, that they split like that. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think there's more to it, and it might be like maybe some drama, like every family has a little
Yeah.
drama, and I'm like, maybe this is
Yeah.
their drama.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a projector. I know you've mentioned projector just a few times.
I knew it.
Yeah. What gave it away? It was like the intimate setting,
Well,
right?
you're really good at seeing people and like seeing the energy. Like we were having a little bit of tech flaws, and Alexandra was like, "Oh, okay, let's ground the energy." Or like I noticed I felt something, so I feel like you have a very innate ability to see a little bit deeper, and it's like probably natural for you, and you think everybody has it, but it's good to remember that it's a gift.
Oh, thank you for that reflection. I know that I'm also a 2-4 line, and I'm curious about what, for those, just in a brief overview, because people can dive into their own exploration here too. But what influence do those numbers have over the way we operate within? I think is it 4 or 5 categories? We have reflector, projector, manifester, generator, and then manifesting generator. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so the numbers are known as the profile lines, and so that's, from what I understand, is kind of like almost like the big umbrella of who you are. Like it's more like your personality that's coming through. And so there's 6 lines, and they all have different qualities. And it can get kind of complex, but one side is unconscious or like ancestral, and then the other side is like your kind of like your conscious personality, things that you would be aware of. And so um, as a 2 and a 4, your 2 is like the natural, it's the dancer. But I guess I could just go through the lines really quick. Like if you start with line 1, which is, I have a line 1 in mine. It's all about, that's why I love books. I just cannot stop reading. I want to gather all the information. 1 is all about foundation. We want to build that foundation, and there's like shadow sides to each one, like where it's great to grab information, but like, what will you do with it? And you might always think you might not ever have enough. So like a line 1 is like kind of like the hoarder of information, but in a healthy state. They're like, oh, I have information I trust. And then the line 2 is like kind of the evolution of that. They already know the information somehow. They have it. They have what they need, but they're known as like the natural or like the dancer. And there's a lot of innate gifts that the line 2 has. And it's just a matter of like recognizing and seeing them. So like the line 2 in a healthy state is seeing them and is honoring these gifts and these qualities. But in an unhealthy state, they might say, oh, someone else is better. There's like a comparison factor, but it's like just good for the line 2s to remember, like, oh, yeah, like I'm really good at that. It's like natural to me. It's like breathing. And then line 3s are like, okay, I've done the foundation. I've been the natural. Now I just want to experiment and I want to do as much as I can. Line 3s are very like non-linear. They're like, I want to do this and then I'm going to do that. And then after that, I'm going to like do something completely different that doesn't make any sense. Or they might be like, oh, well, I want to date tons of people. They might go through lots of relationships, and that's part of their process too. So it's like giving themselves permission to experiment and explore is really good for a line 3. On the shadow aspect, it can be like they're punishing themselves because they are nonlinear. They're like, why don't I have it figured out? Like, I'm not jackhammering my way to my vision. It's like, actually, my vision is to be the hummingbird and to really try like as much stuff as I can. And then the line 4 is like, okay, I've done 1, 2, and 3, and now I'm a line 4 and I know a lot. So I want to bring everybody in and I want to build community. So I really love that you're a 2-4 because I feel like there's an aspect of like trusting you're the natural and then like wanting to bring people into spaces to create community, to connect with others, and to really cherish and see the value of those communal spaces. So you're here to really share with others, to be with others, to have that nice exchange. With the shadow aspect, it could be like, again, like a comparative aspect of like, oh, but that community's better, I'm not ready, or I'm better by myself. And, you know, I think it's interesting because as a line 2, you need more solitude, but as a line 4, you want to be like out and about and like connecting with others. So there's a little bit of an inner
It's the story of my life.
and as
It's
a
like,
projector too. Um, and then the
yeah.
5 is like the 5 is hard. I'm a 5, and I think this is the hardest part of my chart is like there's a lot of projection on the line 5 where like people will project onto you a lot, and there's not always a good reason for it, but you're here to kind of like be the leader. But when you are the leader, people will want to, you know, what the heck, who do you think you are? You know, they'll have their projections or they're not ready yet. And it's just part of the karmic process of the line 5 is that you're here to bring that out of people and they just process it. So it's a lot of cleansing and clearing. But the good side is you can really impact a lot of people, especially through voice and sharing. So that's been the hardest one to step into because I want to make everybody happy and I want everyone to like me. But my human design says, who cares? Like, you don't need to make everyone like you. So it's kind of funny. And then the line 6 is like the Buddha on the roof. They went through the whole evolution, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now they're on the roof and they're like, I'm so wise. Don't you guys see this? Like, of course, it's clear. Like, don't you get it? So the line 6, everyone else is really slow. They're not getting it. And they almost have a more, not alien, but like out of this world perspective where they got the 30,000 view and everybody else is like this with like binoculars and like microscopes. So it's cool. I love the profile lines. I think, again, it gives you a lot of compassionate self-awareness of, oh yeah, that's going to be a continual aspect of my life. And if I know that for you, Alexandra, is like a 2-4, like what is that going to look like? Where do I need my me time? And where can I be like the flower that brings everyone into the field, you know?
Thank you for sharing all of that and the depth of knowledge that's there. I know it's a lot to take in. I'm curious, for my journey, I feel like cacao has been a medicine that really is a beautiful tool to help integrate and especially ground in knowledge and help with embodiment. That has been my journey there. How do you find your relationship with cacao plays into these aspects of human design and gene codes where we have all of this semi external information or recognition of self? I mean it in the sense that these are systems that have been channeled or received, and we begin to see ourselves within that reflected, but to some extent it is still an external system for us. And how do you use cacao or any other tools to really integrate that wisdom? Or is this question making sense?
It is.
Yes.
No, it
Okay.
definitely is. Yeah, the first thing that's coming to mind, Alexandra, is like just just because I think cacao helps us drop into the heart so much. Like I feel like the mind can get a little bit quiet, and then I feel like there's a little bit of a different and softer awareness. So I feel for myself, like I like to drink cacao and then contemplate the gene keys or listen to my gene key audio and just like, how does it feel now, as opposed to listening to it when I'm doing my house chores or something like that. You know, like I feel like it creates a space to be open and to allow the resonance to flow a little bit deeper. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I think when we start to whittle away what we're not, instead of saying like, yeah, I'm all this, like, and you can be, but it's like maybe just giving yourself that permission to connect with that inner resonance. And so I feel like I've started to do human design and cacao together with some folks where we'll do a reading, but we'll sit with cacao, do a little blessing, and then just get us into our bodies. Because oftentimes the mind is like worried about yesterday, or why did I say this? Or, oh, this happened 10 years ago. You know, I feel like the mind is like, can take us on a journey, and that journey is not always fruitful. So I feel like just coming back to the body and that intentional time, like we spoke about. And I feel like ultimately these tools are like meant to create that self-love, because I feel like that's something I've struggled with immensely in my life, like more than I would love to admit, but it's like it's been one of the hardest journeys. And so I feel like when you go on a journey, you know so much about it, and through that knowing, then you can teach. So I feel like that's kind of my wish for myself, is like through cacao, through human design, through being a contemplative spirit that can just slow down a little bit, that can create more spaces for people to not judge their self-worth on achievement. I feel like that's something that's really rewarded in culture and society is like, what do you do for a living? It's like, what did you achieve? And it's like, what did I achieve? Let me tell you. I like climbed the mountain. I went on the journey. I was like little Frodo with my cacao and like had to do the hard stuff and look at those shadowy bits and that uncomfortable stuff or those aspects of self that are difficult. And I feel like instead of being judgmental, I feel like through that journey, cacao like softens us where we're like, oh, compassion, instead of like the judgment, like the Saturnian father that's like, come on. It's more like, oh, okay. Wow, that was different. But you did it. So I feel like it's just that weaving of coming into the heart and softening and just that self-acceptance that blooms from that space.
Yes. There is this part that also comes to mind for me while you're speaking about all of that, especially like the self judgment and that societal expectations here, especially in the states where we grew up. I'm currently listening to a book called Mindset. It's all about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. It's been a really interesting self exploration just listening to this and recognizing it's not necessarily that you have a completely growth mindset or you're a completely fixed mindset, but you might have growth mindset relating to art, but you might have a fixed mindset, maybe mathematics or certain skills that you believe you can't progress or get better with that. So it's really depending on what area you have a fixed or growth mindset. A fixed mindset is really connected to the achievement. If I don't do it naturally, easily, and quickly, then I'm a failure at this and it's not meant for me. And I'm not even going to touch it because if I try to attempt this and I fail, it's going to expose my flaws. So I'm going to protect myself. And generally, that closes one towards any sort of growth. If the people with the growth mindset show up and they're willing to learn, they ask the questions and they feel safe in that failure because they don't see it as failure, they see it as feedback. This is how I can get better. Of course, I'm going to take every opportunity to know more, to learn more. Now, bringing it back to these astrology, Western astrology, all of the cosmologies and human design and gene keys, I feel like sometimes we can get stuck in a fixed mindset around, oh, this is who I am, and the system is telling me who I am, and there's nothing I could do about it. Or these are the potentials and the seeds that are given to me. Now, what can I do with it? And being mindful of the fact of like, where am I actually coming from when I'm working with these systems that can really help to know self. And I love that aspect of, I think, yeah, both Gene Keys and Human Design have the shadow aspect integrated. So it's like, do we acknowledge that and what's the journey out of that, or what is the journey of transformation that enables us to see a different possibility? We touched on it a little bit before we pressed record, but the journey of Frodo from the Shire with the ring and how that aspect of what he was carrying in his journey of what we can use as a metaphor for everything that we use in our life, the darkness that we see outside of us, and how do we still carry that with a pure heart and find that resolution along our journey. I'm not sure if there's something you'd like to share a little bit more about that in your relationship with the hero's journey and how that is, what that is for you.
Yeah, I love the hero's journey. And like, I forget that I'm on it because, sometimes life just swings you in different directions and you're like, everything's good. Oh no, now it's hard again. And I feel like if we know we're on a journey, it's just good to remember that all of those things will show up, the good, the bad, and the challenging. That's just part of life. And there was a woman who was in the Florister cacao circles and she would say like, seek the lesson and love yourself more. She was only in there for a blip of a time, but she said that one thing and I feel like that changed my life where I was like, wow, this is hard and I'm still heading in the direction where I need to go. So I feel like it's just part of the archetypal human journey of really going places. You're on a timeline and you're choosing your timeline to an extent. And also it's been kind of molded and crafted for you. So I feel like it's just good to remember that that's where we're at and that we get to choose and that it can be beautiful. It can be easy, but it really starts with the mindset. Because I feel like, you talked about that book, like the mindset. I mean, wow, like that's where it all starts. I feel like we can drop into the heart easy and we can create those spaces, but sometimes it's like the mind likes to run the show. And I feel like this is what people have been doing for millennia. Is like, how do we give the mind its place and honor it and see it as a tool, which is another lesson from human design, is like the mind is a valuable tool in the toolbox, but that it's within the body and how we're feeling and like just trusting the body, like on our own hero's journey. Like, I'm going on a path, and does this person like give me this or feel this way, or how am I feeling and what's the lesson, and then moving on. Okay, what's this? Do I want fast fashion, or do I want, something maybe secondhand, or, that's like maybe made with an ethical lens or standpoint. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like it's even the tiniest decisions that we get to connect to our hero's journey, because not all of us are going to be like in the big spotlight. I mean, we can make our own spotlight, but like the spotlight is us. And like each of us needs to be able to see that and connect with this. I feel like the hero's journey is just asking us to really connect to what's true for us and what's alive for us, and what is going to take us where we need to go. And if we get off course, that's okay too. We can always come back.
Yeah. I'm not sure. There's lawnmowers outside.
I know,
You
I
can
heard
hear
mine
that.
too. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So there's this part that I need to drop in for a second.
Oh,
This
that
lawnmower is really kicking me out of my mind. Uh, okay. Mm. Tuning into that frequency.
is that a Shruti box? Like, what is
Yeah.
that?
So, one of the quotes that I love from Joseph Campbell is the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And I believe that is from Joseph Campbell. I need a fact check. I was pretty confident in
You
that.
seem like
No,
it.
I'm not so sure. And I have grappled with this a lot. And he also says, follow your bliss. Like, those are the two main ones that really just stand out when I think Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey, Power of Myth, The Cave You Fear to Enter,
Wow.
and Follow Your Bliss. And, contemplating the aspect of the cave you fear to enter holds what you seek, I find that a lot in the areas where I have difficulty showing up. My usual physical response to that, because I work as a kinesthetic channel as well, is like, well, like I just makes me want to throw up. The thought of doing that, literally, I just can't do it. And it's usually that's the indicator for me of like, oh, that's connected to my third center, and that's power, identity, showing up in the world, and my relationship to my expression here on the physical plane. And that's usually like, okay, that's the cave. Like,
Oh.
there, go there. And yeah, so I don't know why I'm bringing that up now exactly, but the part of the hero's journey where we have to eventually at some point also make that move into facing that darkness and facing those parts of ourselves that are more challenging. Uh, is there something around that aspect of the hero's journey that you would like to deepen with?
Yeah, I love that. And I grew up loving Lord of the Rings, and I'm just thinking about he could have just stayed in the Shire and he was just happy and peaceful. There's dancing, there's fireworks, there's cute hobbit girls and stuff like that. So it's like we can choose the comfort. And I know we all do it, right? Comfort is nice. It feels good to know what's safe, but I feel like a quote I heard, and I think it's Lacey Phillips from To Be Magnetic, but she says magnetism is on the other side of fear, something we're so afraid to do. And what happens when we step through, right? Like, it's our mind that's kind of making the story of like, oh my God, everyone's going to laugh at you. Who do you think you are? Da, 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 da. It can be like the script that plays, but in all actuality, it's like, maybe nothing will happen, like, what's the best case scenario? what is it going to feel like? Oh my gosh, I tried and actually I wasn't that great, but okay, good for me. Now I have some data points. If we take it from like a non-emotional state and we can say, here's a data point. And now that I know that, here's what I can do next time and still be proud of myself, because I think that the people we look up to, they've had a series of caves that they had to go through, like infinite caves. And we're only seeing like the polished, version on the outside, like, hey, I did it, look at, this is what's up. But it's like, it took them a lot of effort to get there. And I think that's really good to remember. And it's just exciting. And I feel like that's the fun part about being a human is like, like I get to try a lot of stuff and things I want. And sometimes I'm like, ugh, I can't do it. I'm scared. But then it's like, what's going to happen on the other side? It will surprise us, and it will give us some trust in ourselves and and confidence on the other side. I feel like that's something I'm for sure learning too, because there's a part of me that's just like, I love just connecting with people randomly, or I will apply to things, or when I was doing art stuff, I would apply all the time and get tons of rejection letters. But one day those rejection letters became acceptance ones. And I was like, wow, these are exactly the ones, like artist residencies that I was meant to go to at just the right time. But I was brave enough to actually try, because I could have lived this life that was comfortable. But because my heart was, I want to travel, I want to make art, I want to get paid for it, I feel like the willpower was there. And it's like you always have your guides and the energies that are supporting you. So I feel like what's a massive imperfect action that you can step through and be like, it doesn't have to be perfect. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves just to not ship it, not put it out, not ship it because it's not perfect. And I think that's the exciting part though too. I'm already reflecting in my life, like what are those caves that I'm like, I'm not going there. Hell no. Because I go through a lot, but they're little caves. So now I'm like, what's those
Yeah.
big ones that I'm like, ugh.
What are the big ones? Do you want to share?
Yeah, I feel this is a really beautiful opportunity, because I feel like there's a really big part of me that wants to share and be seen and to help people. But there's also this fear of like, oh no, what if the people from my small town judge me because it's totally weird talking about human design and stuff like that, or very like hyper Christian people. I love Jesus, I love Christianity, but I don't like the aspect where there's like the judgment. And so it's just like stepping through the fear that my vibe isn't for everybody, but if I feel good doing it, that should be exciting, and not being okay if it's not perfect, and knowing that there are people who maybe I could view as like further on their journey, but that's okay. That's just where they're at and their life circumstances led them to that point. But I have valuable information that I can share to other people who might be in a totally different arena. So I feel like it's like what would happen if I did really trust myself, like what would happen and what would that feel like? And I feel like it's exciting, but it is scary. And I think that's like probably the biggest one is like, I know there's a lot of life force that's just like, come on, like, what are you waiting for? And like, even with Cacao, like I've gone through this facilitation training and just realizing like we can sit with the medicine and share it in very reverent ways and sweet ways, but it doesn't have to be so serious too. Like it can be lighter. It can be, let's go on a nature hike and do a blessing with Cacao before we do that. And that can be like a pattern disrupt for someone's day that makes it a little bit more beautiful and a little bit brighter, and just an opportunity to connect with the heart. So I feel like jumping through the cave of like, what if I could trust myself, like it's exciting, but it's like kind of scary in some ways too.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm sure, I mean, I see myself reflected in your share, and I'm sure so many listeners also can relate to that cave of entering. And what would it look like? What does it feel like to just trust myself and express? And what do you feel for you is the foundation that you need in order to cultivate that?
Yeah, I feel like daily aligned action is a big one for me. If I can take care of my foundations, then I know I can show up. And for me, like the foundations are very simple, but I struggle to commit with them. So I think that's been a challenging part of like, doing the prayer, doing like Om Namah Shivaya, like doing my mala beads and going for a walk and being in nature and not listening to anything. I feel like I'm a line one in human design. I have a completely open crown. So I'm like, I want to be inspired by everything. But actually, I feel like there's no room when we are constantly putting things in our mind. Like, I feel like spirit wants to speak to us. But if we're constantly feeling it, there's no room. So I feel like that's like a big lesson that's coming up is like these morning walks that I've been taking without any podcast or even meditation. I'm like, I just want to speak. I want to hear what do I need to know today? Because I definitely feel like a lightness in being and like an expression and a communication that's happening where otherwise it would be a closed door or something. So I feel like just getting back to the simplicity of like the prayer and the movement and the openness to receive. I think those are like, I know those are my foundation, but like I don't do it every day and I can feel it. I'm like, look, it feels crunchy.
Yeah. Thank you for exploring that. There's that part for that's been coming back for me more and more in the past really only 2 or 3 weeks, where it's like just tend to my home, tend to the home, and allowing that conversation to be there. The conversation with the present moment of, yes, I am washing this dish for the third time today, or, you know, or doing, it's more like doing a sink full of dishes for the third time today. And is my home in its optimal condition? Sometimes video games pop in. I never really played that many video games, but sometimes it's like, well, what's the health bar in the living room? Ooh, it's a critical.
Oh, I
Like,
love that.
we need, we need to put some love in there. And bringing that focus back to local. First, okay, we're global. Bring it back to the local community. How can we begin to support the local community? Then it's bringing our food local, bringing whatever we are creating. All the creators that live in our town can come together and create. And then even going beyond that, the home. What can I do within my home before I even start to serve the community? And really, for me, it feels like that process of wax on, wax off, where it feels like the most tedious thing of like, why am I doing this? But when I engage with it, this is the foundation that's enabling me to expand my roots and my presence and my commitment to self, my commitment to showing up, my commitment to my family, to my home, and now to my community, because I've showed myself that I'm able to show up in this moment. And there's this conversation with Jordan Peterson I remember listening to, where he was talking about somebody who, or I think he had a few clients like this, but it was like, just, just clean up your room. Start with your room, clean up your room. And he gave the task to the person where he's like, no, that's not where you are yet. Don't clean the whole room. Just get the vacuum in through the door. Like, get it through the threshold. And sometimes it is that simple. It's like, no, this task is too big for me right now. All I need to do, and what would be the most beneficial and supportive thing for me, is get that vacuum through the door. And then maybe it sits there for a week before you even turn it on or plug it in. But that space for just recognizing, okay, I'm here. This is where I want to be, but this is what I can commit to right now, and feel that success and that pride in that action and that small action.
Wow, I mean, you're like a projector that's really great because this is exactly what I'm going through in my life. We had that video game moment where we're like, wow, this house it's struggling and things are breaking. And my husband and I were like, it was hard. It was a hard conversation because that's a big part of my responsibility. But yeah, coming back to the roots, taking care of the spaces and the places, and if you look around your room, you can feel the energy of the space, and how does it make you feel when you're performing your dream or your vision. It all needs to come in line, but like you're saying, it has to start with just bringing the vacuum in and knowing that that's your intention. So I feel like you hit the nail on the head, and it's really nurturing for me to hear that today. So thank you.
I'm glad it resonates with you. Yeah, it's the same medicine for me too, of showing up to this task. And sometimes that task is the most brutal thing that I could do at the moment. Like, yeah, I'd love to just write 50 emails to whoever, but actually cleaning up that area of the house is like anything but it.
That's the cave.
That exactly, that becomes the cave to enter, where it's like, okay, facing ourselves, and then it's all the judgment that comes up, and or maybe even the confusion or whatever it is that comes up, but staying conscious. And that's what I notice for me is I'd I've been decluttering for, my daughter's 10 now. Started when she was 2, so like 8 years. And I started the Marie Kondo thing before it was cool. I was doing
Of
it and then I
course.
got stuck and I just never was able to really kick past these certain levels until my partner, my fiance right now, he really helped it because he went through that whole minimalism and decluttering. So he was really able to hold that vision and clarity and that pillar and that strength. But the interesting thing was the energetics of it and facing parts of my home that were just unconscious. And as soon as I would start to approach that energy, I'd get exhausted. I'd like feel dizzy. I'd feel nauseous. I'd need to lay down. There are times I needed to go and clean the closet, and I was so physically ill, I needed to lay down. And I was like, wow, looking at it energetically and having the space, I'm like, this is just so much unconscious energy that I need to now connect in with my light and bring
Hmm.
presence to, allowing myself to really transform it because we're holding these energies of pocket within our, especially within our home, but they're a reflection for what's going on inside our body. And I'm curious for you if you've experienced that in your life and how cacao helps you
Please
with that
help
too.
me. Yeah, I think a lot about like the people who've sat with cacao traditionally for millennia and the simplicity but depth of those lifestyles. And it brings me back to my heart, especially someone who does a lot of camping, just realizing like, what do I really need? You know, I don't need a lot. I just think I do, or I feel like I do. And I'm also very much like a hummingbird where I want to try everything. So my house is a reflection of that. Like looking around, I'm like, oh yeah, I see this, I see that, I see this, I see that. And it's like, just how can it exist in a place that feels ordered because the fluidity is already there? You know, like that was a big thing that came in through the last cacao apprenticeship was structured fluidity. The fluidity is already there, like it or not. Most people who connect with cacao, you know, there's an easy, flowy, feminine aspect, and I feel like cacao helps wake that up. But like to activate that, the masculine essence of structure is sometimes it can take a lot out of you because it might not feel as natural. So I think it's good to remember, and I feel like what you said, it starts locally, you know, like how can we change the world if there's a war inside of our own hearts, you know, and I feel like it's the same thing as like this is happening and where does that show up inside of me? And exactly what you're saying is a perfect reflection of, you know, I need to look into these places and examine them and to maybe go on a little, maybe it's an emotional journey or maybe it's a physical exhaustion, you know, whatever it may be, that's okay. Who am I now versus who was I and what objects represent this version of me in this state, in this place? You know, I feel like it's exciting, but it's hard work and it might seem like simple or mundane, but I feel like I heard a quote once where they said like your living space is a reflection of your mind. And I was like, oh, I don't want to hear that, you know, because I'm like, it's messy, you know? And it could be cleaner, but it's beautiful at the same time. So it's like, it's again like compassion building. I feel like it's like, oh yeah, I've been neglecting that. And I can tell because it's like an inner buzz, like a dissonance that's existing. So I think it's exciting and it feels like that's where we get to start is where we are and what we have and what we surround ourselves with. And if we can realize that connection energetically, I think it really does like allow us to step into our purpose as like partner, as mother, as entrepreneur, as whatever we identify ourselves as. So I think that's really, it's wise.
There's this one quote or saying that always kind of rubbed me like in a difficult way, which was start where you are with what you have. And that was something for me that was like the hardest thing to relate to or understand of like, yeah, but I don't have what I need. And it was this fixed mindset, but no, like the rebelling against that. And now over I feel like Cacao had a lot to do with that of the grounding, the presence, the compassion, the love, the empowerment that I received and the insight and the space that I had to hold myself in really enabled the okay, start where I am with what I have and just really slowing down to begin to take stock of all right, so this could actually help me and shifting from that fixed mindset into the growth mindset of what's actually the possibility around me. And it took a lot. I'm feeling the soils now. It always feels like, I'm like, wasn't I here? Didn't I already do this? Like I'm still at this level. But of course, we're spiraling into new levels of being. Tony Robbins says it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness. And that one always stood out with me where it's like, yeah, okay, there. And okay, sorry, I just like full of quotes today.
I love it.
There was a talk. There was a talk I listened to the other day, and that really helped shift my mindset too. Of this man, I can't remember his name right now, but it was on Diaries of a CEO, and he's this Australian entrepreneur, and he shared that somebody today is waking up with the resources that you want, and that it's only a few conversations away. So this is conversations with Cacao. So the aspect of like, oh wow, it's just about talking to somebody. Who can I ask? I think one of the stories he gave was, is it Top Gun? They wanted to do like a Star Wars, but with boats and planes. And somebody working on the film was like, why don't we call up the Navy and see if they'll lend us their boats? And so somebody called the Navy and they're like, yeah, we would love to be a part of that because it will help us to recruit more people and really put the Navy in the spotlight. Let's do it. We'd love to be a part of a blockbuster movie. And it's like that started with a call to the Navy because
Yeah.
they had the resources and just beginning to tune into that space of what does resourcefulness look like? How can I begin to play with that and expanding our parameters around that? And I feel like your background in art, is there a conversation for you that plays off of those ideas?
Yeah, I feel like being in the art world, especially in Detroit, it's really even more so now. It's a very happening space and place, and it's really a beautiful community of artists and galleries and gallerists and people who want to celebrate that creative life force. And yeah, just being in the art community, you got into a show because you talked to somebody, and that's the same kind of theme of you talk to somebody who talks to somebody else, and then you know each other or you run into one another, and it's like, hey, I like your work, or it's really nice because essentially art is like you're taking your energy, you're creating something for the external world to see. It's like from the inside to the outside, and it's another relic of you. And so I feel like people either see you through your art or they get to talk to you like openings and things like that. So I feel like, and especially with the digital era, like I wasn't quite like a social media person when I was doing art, but now it's like so different, and it's really special because it is that idea of how can we ask for help and knowing that there's people and energies that do want to help us and serve us. As you were talking, I was just thinking about how we sit with Cacao and you feel this connection to a deeper degree of the elements. So I feel like the fire, right? The sacred fire or the earth can take things for us and give it back to the earth. That's a sweet blessing of sometimes we just have to ask, how can I shed this? Or what do I need to do next? Or who do I need to get in contact with? Or even for me, sometimes I will just get an intuition of reach out to Madhu, reach out to Mia, or give her flowers when you drop off your art supplies that you've sold her. And it's like little intuitive hints. And I'm like, is this like wasting time and resources? But every time I do it, like somebody, the person on the other end is like, wow, you just lifted my whole day because you included a bouquet of flowers or you sent me a text or, I feel like it's just interesting. Sometimes we think we always need to ask for the help from the outside, but I think a lot of times it comes from the inside too. Like, what can I do today to serve? What does that look like? And maybe it's something random, I don't know, go for a walk and then you meet somebody or you see a butterfly and your whole day is just better. It's like, it's just really sweet. So I love this conversation because it's a reminder of like, who is here to help, but also what do I need to know that's already inside of me. I feel like it's an interesting push and pull. It's like what's inside, what's outside, what do I need to do next? What does that look like? And just trusting.
I love that you brought in that you do those little extra things too, because I find myself doing that in my life as well. I don't need to, and it actually costs a little bit extra effort for me. But in the joy of doing it, it actually is no effort. For a while, I was really into listening to near death experiences, and the part of a lot of accounts where the life review comes in and the moments that they saw as eloquently. The parts of reviewing of really confronting themselves where they're like, oh God, I was a really bad person at this point or not really good. And that stuff never came up. It was, oh, you thought this thing about this person that wasn't very nice. And the effect that it had on that person, even just like energetically casting those spells on those people. It was really like those small moments and how the trail that impacted. And it seems so inconsequential, but actually the effect that it has was so much bigger. And if you believe in life after death or not, I think there's a lot in our society that puts so much emphasis on the importance of these really big actions, like what you were talking about, of like all of your accomplishments. But these small things are so pushed aside. And I feel like having the space to really connect in on that soul level of like, okay, if I actually sit with that and think, me getting these flowers and then offering it to your friend and how much that means to her and the vibration that it catalyzes within her, like that's so moving and touching. And we take these moments for granted, like they're just like a little grain of salt, or not a grain of salt, a grain of sand. But it builds up to all this whole beautiful beach that we're on. I'm not sure if my metaphor
Uh,
is making much sense
no,
here,
I
but
love it. I love it. It's so nice. And I think that's like, again, it's starting locally and without crossing your own boundaries or, having your
yeah,
self-preservation and respect. Because on the shadow side of that, it could be like the people pleaser, like, please love me. But
yeah,
if you feel it, that's your spirit speaking to you and saying like, yeah, what if you did do that? Or you make a plum cake for your in-laws who are coming to visit. It takes time, but like maybe I can listen to something nice and just give them nourishment through food. We're always getting these little hunches, and it's up to us to listen. If we can add more beauty to someone's day, and I think it needs to start with ourselves, because I think a lot of times I love doing things for other people, but it's only within this last year I'm like, I should buy myself flowers, or like get my hair cut or something like that. It's like the self-worth and the many different ways that we can express it, eating slowly, making a fire just for ourselves, or um, just not having discipline. I think that's also like a form of self-love that I've been talking with my therapist about. Is like discipline is also self-love, because when we're disciplined, we honor our time and we value our time. And I think it's like you said, going from like the going into the growth mindset with everything, instead of like that I'm mad at myself because I'm not disciplined. It could be like, oh, wow, this is a place to grow. And like, I don't have discipline yet, but I can like flex that muscle. And here's like what it could look like.
yeah. Yes. I would love for you to take us on a journey around your relationship with nature, because you wrote me a little something and it was just so beautiful, and what you would like to normalize on this earth, or what you wish there was more of. So if you'd like to guide us through that beautiful heart vision that you have.
Yeah, I feel like nature gives us so much, and the beauty is so present and the life is so alive. A lot of times we just move through it so fast and we're not really appreciating it, and we don't let ourselves go into the childlike state of wonder. Oh my God, the butterfly. Just seeing a little creature flying through the air. To me, that's magic. It's like, how is that even possible? It's so small, and the monarchs migrate so far, and it's just so fascinating to allow yourself time and space to be in nature uninterrupted. And I feel like if everybody did that and let others have their own harmony in their experiences, I feel like the world would be a really beautiful, peaceful place. And it is, but I feel like the human story makes it challenging, where there's like, there's all these very challenging things happening. But if people could find the space and time to see value, not just in their achievements on the external 3D reality, but to just sit in a field of, goldenrod, or to like really observe a tree or watch a grasshopper for like more than a second. It's like, it's just so beautiful when we see nature through that loving lens. And it's not like nature's all like butterflies and rainbows, right? There's a lot of destruction, the destroyer, but also like the birthing process is always happening. And it's like we're a part of that. So I feel like if people would give themselves permission to see that as an achievement, me sitting on the grass after I eat my lunch and not looking at my phone, just the reality of it all is like very beautiful, and it's very grounding and very humbling. Even for my mom, I would visit her weekly, and we would just go for walks for a while, and she'd always say, "Wow, I feel so good." I was like, "Yeah, like this is the stuff." Like it's free and it's beautiful and it's so nice. And even myself, like I obviously love nature, but I don't spend enough time outside because I need to prove myself and I need to do a good job and, work on this and work on that. But I feel like that should be part of the prescription of life, is if you're feeling low, if you're feeling sad, if your mind is running wild, just take some time and sit and go in nature, go to a park, watch the birds, get some binoculars, and make it simple. Like, there's a lot of healing in many different ways when we just find ourselves in those spaces and that physical excitement, because nature never says like 2 minutes a coyote is going to come by. We don't know that. It's not airing on YouTube in like 10 minutes or something. If you go out there, you just don't know what's going to happen. Like I in my own backyard, I'm like amazed. Like I've seen so many cool birds and feathers and just magical stuff happening. I'm like, okay, I feel like a kid again. The lilacs are out. It smells beautiful. Like it's just so healing. And I think everybody deserves that. And just realizing that we're part of that beautiful web of life and we're not separate from it. I think that's something we're really good at, is thinking how separate we are. But if we remember that we're connected, then, there would be a lot more softness and acceptance.
Very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I am also curious about your relationship with art and what that means to you now, and maybe what it was for you when you were younger.
Yeah. I feel like when I was younger, art was definitely cathartic in a way. Like I love making art, like using my hands, creating, like even in human design, I have an activation that's like called Gate 41. And it's all about just like the desire to just create. My younger years were really processing some heavy, dense experiences in my life, and I'm glad that they were there. But even like before I really met Cacao and knew about like ceremony and ritual, I ended up burning a lot of the art and just saying, thank you. You taught me. I processed so much. And, here I'm giving it back. And thank you for this gift. And now I feel it's manifesting in different ways, more poetry and writing, making things by hand, working with plants, making herbal tinctures and face oils. So I feel like, and making food, I feel like those are like how art is coming through me. But it's just so infinite. Art, before I boxed it in like something on paper, and now I'm like, wow, I made my earrings and that's art, or I made like a beautiful plum cake and that's like art. Or even so now the art that I do on paper, it feels exciting because they're carrying a different resonance. Instead of the depths of human emotion, I'm trying to create work that is uplifting and beautiful, is sweet. It's kind of more simple in some ways too, but it's like kind of a reflection of the inner journey. I'm loving learning about like the chakras and different systems of study, and just imagine, what does that look like? What does the root chakra look like as opposed to this other energy center, and maybe what's beautiful language I can put on these art pieces. I started a little series of affirmation art, and it's just a beautiful earthy color, like blues and greens, but then it says like, I am enough or I am loved. So I feel like when I see those things around my house, oh, I feel good. Like it's a pattern disrupt when I'm having like a hard moment. And just remembering that there's a lot of beauty out there too.
I think it's what we talked about before with that tidying or clearing. It's that art sounds like that you make is like this conscious portal. So now we're putting this art here as a conscious initiation to change the energy and how we interface with our surroundings. And yeah, it's so beautiful.
I love that.
I know this one artist that we bought some of her art in Savannah, and she calls herself a heartist, like heart and
Yeah,
art.
I love
And
that.
she has these really super adorable, beautiful drawings and affirmations. But I was like, heartist, yeah, we need more
It's
heartists in
so
the
sweet. It's so
world.
sweet. And it's amazing. I have this friend, Medu, and her art it's like a lot of tension and like, it's like the rawness. It's the Kali energy. There's just like this raw ripping apart, and it's emotional, but it's so beautiful. I admire her, and I feel like that's her teaching, is like to help people remember there's that visceral rawness to life. And it's just beautiful the different ways people make art and create, because it's like you're kind of here for a blip of time, right? We don't know how long, and what are you going to do with that little blip, and then you just go back. So it's like it's exciting, and people have been making art on walls, on caves, and petroglyphs and all these beautiful things just to say I was here. So I feel like art has a really beautiful reminder that we're all creator beings, and that we're here to make something, and it can look very, very different from person A to B to C and on.
Thank you for bringing us on that journey as well. There's this part where, I mean, this is a discussion that is, could go on forever about art, what art is, and what that means. But there are certain parts where I recently went to the Guggenheim in New York with my family, and one of the exhibitions here, she was an activist and had a lot of more like political art, and for me, I don't necessarily resonate with that because it brings me on an emotional journey to despair.
Yeah.
Like when when I see this, I'm not leaving feeling inspired, feeling connected, feeling like, wow, let's do something. It wasn't activating me towards or resolve or towards action. So I have since then been reacquainting myself with that question of what is art, what is its purpose, and what place does that have within me, within society, which I used to think about a lot as a teenager. And then there's this other exhibition I went to a few years ago of I, and also, again, political art. But the impact of that exhibition for me was just pushed so much within me and brought me on this really powerful emotional journey, but also then catalyzed possibility and potential of like, even though it is so like really heavy exhibition, especially it was like, from the 80s until now. So it's like all of these installations that took so long, all of these heavy themes in one exhibition. You're walking around. At the end of it, I was like, okay,
You
I
need a
think
break.
I need a break. But the most powerful one for me, and well, there are many powerful ones, but he created all of these ceramic sunflower seeds, and I can't remember. It was a phenomenal amount of sunflower seeds there, and basically it was like, this is the potential that everybody has. It was the potential of every person in China. Will you become a sunflower, or will your growth end at being the seed? And just seeing the pile of that, and it's like, wow, each seed has that potential, and the impact that art or art in general, it brings that, again, it's the knowing of self, I think. So that's me riffing on that. I would love to hear your relationship and your wealth of knowledge, how that plays out in your life.
Yeah, I feel like it's making me almost come back to the gene keys too, because it's like the different frequencies that one can make artwork about. Like even if I look at gene key 25, which is the ultimate expression is universal love, but the shadow is constriction. Like I could easily make a lot of art about feeling constricted, right? It's human nature. I understand that very well. But like what would it look like if I made artwork about acceptance or artwork about universal love, like that kind of journey that one goes through? So I feel like it's a really cool conversation because art is an extension of the person. Art is an extension of society. Art mimics society. And I feel like it's just interesting, right? It's like, what do I have the capacity to connect with today? And how do I know what it will make me feel? Am I ready to go on that journey? Because you're kind of giving your consciousness in a way like permission to be taken on somebody else's journey, you know, even if it's you're looking at like a Mark Rothko and it's just beautiful colors. It's like you're jumping into that space that they created. Even like watching like a scary movie, right? You're letting your consciousness jump around in this journey
Yeah.
of art that it's creative, but it's also like taking you places. And so I feel like as I get older, I get a little bit more protective about what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not out of fear, it's just because I feel very sensitive. So I feel like I've been really called to go to a museum just to spend, as it's getting colder here in Michigan. That'll be fun just to see what's the journey I get to go on when I step foot into this place, right? I can see all the beautiful relics of different African cultures and the hats, the headdresses, the sound instruments, or the artwork that they painted, and what did that mean to them? Or something so contemporary, my mind's just like, is that art? Like, you know, like it's just so funny. It's exciting to think about, like, that we can, even this, it's like this podcast is a journey, taking somebody on a ride, and they don't know what to expect. They're trusting this vehicle, this space to guide them and take them on some kind of different hero's journey. Whereas like, you know, you go into a museum or a gallery, wow, I'm getting like a window into the reality of somebody else, and here's what that feels like. And when you're the feeler, you're going to feel that, right? It's like, oh, sometimes it can be heavy and sometimes it can be inspiring or just so contemplative, and then every emotion in between. It's cool. It's like a self-awareness thing. Like, what am I ready for today? And what do I need to do afterwards to maybe nurture myself for going on a journey with someone, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost like visiting someone. When you visit someone who's in a different part of life, sometimes it can be uplifting and you feel, oh, wow, I feel like this was a nice exchange. But other times, like, someone can be in a challenging spot, right? That's normal. And sometimes we can take that on too. What do we got to do after those experiences to really give ourselves a hug, or drink the cacao, or take the shower, or like just lay on the earth or something?
That is something I've never really heard spoken about in art, and I've definitely had a lot of conversations about art in my day, especially um, when I was really invested in, you know, music and theater and dance and all of that. And I think that, I mean, you just blew my mind. I just like wanted to get that in there. It's always this dialogue of like, what is art? Is this art? Is that art? But I think I've never once viewed or lensed art as the journey of the individual, and seeing it as like, okay, let me meet you and see you where you are and what you're sharing, and having it be a conversation really with the separation of this is your journey. For me, it's always been like, well, you're creating a statement, and it's the conversation with the statement, or it's a conversation. Yeah, a conversation with, it almost becomes its own entity, where now I'm not even looking at the artist, but I'm looking at the creation of it. The only dialogue is happening between me and the piece of art in front of me, as opposed to zooming out a little bit and now seeing, oh, wait, all I'm seeing is an expression of this person's journey and their life and what they're giving to me at this moment. So thank you for bringing that in, because that's really a profound shift in my lensing and relationship to art.
Yeah, it's cool. And I feel like I learn a lot of things as I speak them out loud. So I'm just really grateful for this space to have that practice and that weaving. Because I feel like there's been a long period where I'm like, I'm not going to identify as an artist, but it's such a rich part of who I am that I can't not. So I feel like this has been a really beautiful exchange of what's the journey? What journey am I going to go on when I like look at Jennifer's art versus this person or this other person or something like that?
It's such a easy thing to box us into parameters of what we are and what we are not. Breaking those illusions around self of I am either an artist or I'm not. And again, this I exhibition that he showed, he has taken vases created from the dynasties, and they're created to, they're considered these very important relics. And there's a photography series of him just dropping it and smashing it and painting like Coca-Cola on it. And I feel like sometimes we need to do that with our beliefs of like, yeah, just smash that old relic that was a copy from somebody else that was passed down. And it's not even something that was uniquely created. It was just like mass produced at the time. And just because it's ancient and old doesn't mean that it's valuable.
Hmm.
I think that metaphor can go to the same things. Like I know for me of my upbringing with music was a little bit challenging, and just being like, well, I'm not this. I'm not a concert musician. I will never be a concert musician. I'm a cellist. This is the parameters of what I accept for myself of that fixed mindset of like, all right, no, let's just take that old belief and smash it because it's not serving anymore.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like it's exciting and it's kind of like a mirror of, what's going on in society too. If you look into astrology, transcending into like the age of Aquarius and like this more fluid nature, like getting out of the Capricornian aspects of the way things are, which are useful, but I think it's like that's already here, it's in place, and here's how it can be more flowy or how we can disrupt this. And I don't know, it's an interesting time to be alive, and I feel like everybody says that from every generation of humans. It feels exciting, but it's a little crunchy, like wow, like there's this older aspect, generational, very precious, but now we're moving past that and we want to create more. There's a lot of creation energy coming through and different ideas. So it feels exciting. And I like that, what you said, because it just reminds me of where am I gripping too tight on how I'm identifying as myself, right? Like you're so much more than that. The spark that's inside of you is like infinite, and we get to choose like where we want the spark to go. And it just feels really, really humbling to remember that, it's things can be precious and it's beautiful when they are, but it's also liberating when we start to let go a little bit in some ways. I don't claim to know like and do that every day of my life, but I know like when I practice it a little bit, I'm like, oh, that feels good to not be boxed in as much.
Yeah, definitely. So there is actually a new question that I'm going to love to ask people, and you touched on it a little bit before, but what is your favorite thing about being human?
I love
It's my new
that.
favorite
I
question
love
now.
that. Oh my God, I love that question. I love being able to love. I think that's the most beautiful and like sweetest gift we can give, is to offer love to others and to see that we are reminding them of love. I think that just feels really good to see someone, accept them, and offer something. It doesn't even, I mean, love is so hard to even describe. It's kind of like an energy that is behind all things, and then we forget. But I feel like when I'm able to soften and just realize these moments are so precious and to give love in some way, that's just the most beautiful thing. And my sister just had a baby not that long ago. He's 4 months old, but he's been like the greatest seed of the love was always there, but sometimes we go through stuff and it's hard to access. But he cracked everybody in my family, where now we're all just a bunch of love bugs. And I'm like, this is so nice. I'm going to cherish this because I don't know how long it'll be, but I feel like the gift of being human is, I feel like, just the essence of love in my opinion. Yeah,
Mm,
it's so sweet.
yeah. Oh, I love that answer. What do you feel is the mission of Cacao at this time?
Yeah, I feel it's almost the same answer. I like to include this in my blessing of crossing borders and boundaries and people, because I do believe in the law of one and the human family, and that we're here as different expressions and we come as somebody else in another costume every time around. And so I feel like cacao is like the universal energy of the heart, and just reminding us that we don't always have to have such a heavy, we can protect ourselves, but it's okay to open the heart too, because I think there's a lot of emphasis that gets put on the mind. Like, look at me, I'm smart, I know a lot of stuff, I went to school, da 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 da, I can prove whatever I need. But like when we drop into the heart, there's that vulnerability. And I think there's just such a beauty in that. And it's like when I open my heart, I feel like my whole reality changes. I feel like that's the essence of this new baby too. It's like, I'm like, was that baby born with the spirit of cacao, like sitting next to him or something? Because just that feeling of love and softness is so palpable. So I feel like she's just calling to people, and she's calling for people to connect with her in a personal way, and to remember the ripple of this weaving with the spirit. It's like we're here, we're our own sovereignty, and there's this energy that's with this delicious, nutritious, heart expanding ancient medicine. It's like we have the privilege and the pleasure to connect with it at just the right time. For each person listening, I'm sure they're like, wow, yeah, I remember like my first cup of cacao. It was just life-changing. So I feel like just really blessed, and I feel like she's wanting us to hold reverence to the wisdom and the teachings, but to know that we can connect with her in our modern way as well. And I feel like this podcast is a really cool embodiment of that modern aspect, connecting technology, but we're both sitting with this spirit. So I feel like she's like, all right, let's do it. Let's open some hearts. Let's soften. Let's like be vulnerable and cry if we need to, or like, let's feel empowered. Or yeah, it's such one of the biggest blessings of my life, and just feeling really grateful.
So beautiful. And I think the name of your platform is just like the perfect expression of who you are and what you emanate, and the energy I feel from you too, that very grounded, calming, loving, and for that energy of simplicity that comes through. So thank you for sharing you and sharing your time with us. A tradition that I started on this podcast that we have here is I ask the previous guest to leave a blessing for the next guest on the
Oh,
podcast.
that's so nice.
So I would love to share the blessing for you that was left from our previous guest, and they don't know who it is, so it's just from the heart. The blessing is, by the time you are hearing this, you probably just had a beautiful conversation with Alexandra. I wrote this to remind you that your dedication, your work, and your choices took you here. You made it there. Thank you for sharing a piece of your vision with us. Thank you for your inspiration. Let's keep moving forward.
That's so beautiful. Wow. I'm like, I'm not gonna cry.
You can cry if you need. Let it flow.
That's so nice. I love that. Thank you. Thank you.
Very beautiful blessing. If you feel called to tune in and share a blessing for our next guest that I will pass along.
Yeah, I feel like what's coming up for me is just extending the gratitude to this next person for their time and for their unique earth walk, for saying yes to their yeses along the path, and for all the things that lit them up. Thank you for playing such a beautiful role in this web of life that we're all part of, this weaving. Thank you for doing your part, and to trust yourself and trust your mission, and to know that you have everything you need to thrive. That's what's coming to me.
So beautiful. I look forward to passing that along. And thank you so much for that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom, for your heart, and just checking in if there's anything else you wish to share before we close up our space together.
Yeah, I feel like the heart knows more than we realize and we give space for. So I feel like the last thing I would say, and I think this is a message for myself too, but to make more time in silence so that you can listen a little bit deeper, because from that space, I feel there's a trust and there's a connection. So knowing that spirit's always speaking, and it can come in many different forms. And through that silence, I feel like she can speak a little bit louder. So I just want to leave that last thought for myself to do, as well as anybody, Alexandra, everyone listening. I think that's a really important thing to know.
Thank you. Thank you for that last nugget of wisdom. And I will definitely be meditating on that later today, too.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Alexandra. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone tuning in, just feeling really, really blessed. And it's a miracle to connect with people across states and many miles, and to still connect with the heart. It's infinite. It doesn't know boundaries.
Yeah. Yes, that is so true. And if anybody would like to connect with you, I will leave your information in the bio. And you do one-on-one sessions as well of human design readings mixed with cacao and the gene keys. And yeah, so reach out
Absolutely.
to Jennifer, and I'll make sure that all of the information is in the bio here so that they can find you easily.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you.
All right, so I love to bring one hand to my heart, one hand to my belly as we tune into our bodies, feel the journey that we've been on, feeling all of the places that we explored, the new doors opened, maybe new paths revealed, maybe old doors closed, and just allowing ourselves to, as we began with our breath, closing our circle with conscious breath, finding ourselves as the pillar, the central channel of our vessel, of our consciousness at this time. And from this space, we give thanks to the heart of the earth. We give thanks to the heart of the sky. We give thanks to the heart of the fire, and we give thanks to the heart of the waters. We give thanks to the heart of the air, and we give thanks to the four winds that we breathe, the four directions that hold us in every moment, to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. We give thanks to our guides, our guardians, and our protectors, all of those who have guided us along our path into this moment. And may all of the wisdom that has catalyzed our knowing, our thoughts, our being within this conversation be integrated into our lives with ease, gentleness, fun, love, and grace. May we walk with our hearts open, with our minds open, led by the path of our intuition, of our clarity, and sharing our voice with others with confidence and generosity. And so it is. And I love to end with it is done, it is done, it is done, and it is fun, it is fun, it is fun.
I love that. Yes.
What a beautiful conversation with Jen of Jen Open Hearts. Her wisdom and passion for human design, cacao, and self-love are truly inspiring. If you felt sparked by this episode, be sure to connect with Jen on Substack at Jen Open Hearts, where she shares deeper insights, reflections, and offerings from the heart. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share with someone who would love this conversation. Your support helps us keep bringing these meaningful conversations and stories to life. And for now, remember to nourish your roots, awaken your heart, and embody your magic, because you are pure magic. Until next time.